It is a dreary day out there, which means it's a perfect day to make some beef bone broth. This is one of 2 bags that we got from the butcher. And when you get the soup bones, which is what these are, they assume you're going to give them to your dog, but we are going to make them into some gelatinous goodness to serve as a base for soups and stews and gravies and meat injection and all kinds of wonderfulness. It'll also yield some tallow, in case anyone's interested in processing tallow. So all I've done is take my big roasting pan and lay the bones out in it, and it's okay that they are kind of doubled up there, because what I'm doing right now is I'm roasting them. And I like to pre-roast my bones before I put them in a big pot of water to cook down, because it gives them a kind of an added depth of flavor. The other thing that I did was take kosher salt, which I don't know if you can see too many of the crystals, maybe right there. And I've salted it. And I'm not going to offer any other seasoning than that in this stage of the game, but the salt will also help bring out that flavor. So I'm going to hit that back corner. Looks like it's a little bit light in the salt department. There we go. And now I'm going to cover it with aluminum foil. Now, because it is a dreary day out there, we have a nice cheerful fire going, which is the perfect place to set my roasting pan. And I'm going to let it do its thing until it starts sizzling and all that. It's on the griddle, which on our wood stove, that middle part there is quite a bit thinner and made out of, I think, steel instead of the cast iron that the rest of it is. It gets very, very hot. So that will brown the meat that's on the bones. So I'll turn it over periodically and make sure everything gets nice and caramelized, as it were, before I stick it in the pot of boiling water. All right, it's been about 20-25 minutes. Let's see what we've got here. Pretty nice. It's already starting to render a little bit of stuff in the bottom. Now, some of these bones don't have marrow, but some of them do. You can see there we're starting to get that caramelization I was talking about. So I'm just going to kind of turn everything over, make sure we get equal opportunity caramelization. And it'll probably roast for a total of a couple hours maybe before I throw it into the stock pot. This one has a lot of meat on it. That one might become lunch, actually. Ooh, that one's looking nice. All right, check that in a bit. Okay, about another half hour later. See what we got here. Be careful not to burn yourself. Turn them around again. Oh yeah, now we're talking. See that beautiful brown there through the steam. It's that one that has so much meat on it, but I think I'm gonna do something different with. You really don't want a ton of meat in, or any meat really, in your broth itself. So all the meat scraps are gonna get filtered out before I preserve the broth itself. It is time to take these nicely brown chunks over into my stock pot. So I'm just picking out the ones that already have that nice brown on them. And if they don't, I'm going to leave them in here for just a little while longer. That's a good candidate right there. And I've had this water heating up here on the stove for a little while. Here's a good one. Now, as I move these over, it's going to create more room in the roasting pan so that the rest of them can also brown up nicely. And then pretty soon they'll all be over there. And then they will make wonderful bone broth. It takes a long, long time to cook it down. I might even have to do it over a couple of days. Fast forward about an hour and a half. Got a nice layer of beautiful golden fat coming to the top, and these are rendering down. Fast forward about 2 days. This has been simmering on the fire for all of that time. And I've fished out the bones now that are pretty much free of connective tissue. There's all that wonderful marrow and collagen-based stuff still in the pot here, but you can see how beautiful that color is. There's also a layer of liquid fat on the top that I am going to separate when I go to freeze this. I've taken the pot off the stove and it's cooled on the counter. I'm not going to throw it in the refrigerator to cool because then it would just heat up the refrigerator. And I want to show you what it looks like now. So it's still pretty wobbly. My next task is to skim off the top layer of that fat and then see what the consistency of the broth underneath is. Now I'm ready to put it into my silicone 1-cup molds. This is like a giant ice cube tray. I was fortunate, apparently. I bought this a few years ago and I'm glad because the price of these has like tripled since then. And what I'm doing is I'm taking my fine mesh strainer and I'm just ladling the bone broth through it until it gets to, you know, right about there. There's a marker in here, and that top line is 1 cup. And the reason that that 1 cup line is below the surface of the mold is because when things freeze, they expand. So you want to leave room to accommodate that. You can consider it sort of like headspace when you're canning. Okay, now I'm going to put the lid on and put it in the freezer. And I like to freeze the broth because then I vacuum seal it and I can just stack it nicely in the freezer in these cube shapes, which is kind of a space saver. So that's my plan. Sure that I achieved the gel-like consistency that I was going for, but it's going to be fine regardless. It's going to make a beautiful addition to meat injections and marinades and soup bases and all kinds of wonderfulness. We use this stuff all the time. All right, so this has now been frozen solid. This is actually the second round. The first round, I emptied the silicone mold and put the cubes into this Ziploc. Now that everything's frozen solid, I'm going to vacuum seal it. And there you have it. So I'll package 2 cubes in some of these bags and 1 cube in some of the other ones. And that gives me some options when I am cooking with our homemade beef bone broth.